Hey folks, this is JR with DIY Prepper. Welcome to the channel. Over the past few decades, the internet's grown from a pretty small network just used by a few people, all the way to something that's become a vital part of nearly every aspect of our lives. And one of the most common ways that people use it is to gain information. But if we were to lose the internet, our access to that would be cut off. So because of that, every prepper should have a substantial library that they can use as a reference if that were to happen. Some of the most important books for preppers to have are those that cover the basic fundamentals of preparedness, and one of my favorites is The Prepper's Long-Term Survival Guide by Jim Cobb. I bought this a couple years ago and it does a very good job going over things like food and water storage, defense, medications, and other medical supplies you need to have, and also other things like how to build a survival group. They've recently come out with a second edition that's been expanded and then updated to reflect some things that's happened over the past couple of years, and Jim Cobb actually sent this to me a while back, and that's pretty cool because before I started this channel, he's one of the authors that I learned a lot from and I look up to, and it's cool that he's a fan of the channel now. But the reason why I like his stuff so much is that the information in the books is good, first of all, but also the way that he writes is very easy to follow. It's very relatable, and that's why he was one of the people that I gravitated more towards when I started down my preparedness journey. Another fundamental preparedness book that everyone should have is How to Survive the End of the World as We Know It by James Wesley Rawles. And this one does cover a lot of the same topics as Prepper's Long-Term Survival Guide, but it does it in a different way. Like this one I think is a little bit more academic, it's more detailed, more comprehensive, but by that same token, it's not quite as easy to read. But I do like having both of these, and I think as many of these kind of just wide view preparedness books that you can get, the better, because everybody has a different perspective. They all say different things about the same stuff, so that really can help you find solutions that work best for you because nobody's situation is the same. Tools for Survival is another excellent book written by James Wesley Rawles, and what I like about this one is that it really zeroes in on the specific items that you would need to perform different tasks. So when you see Tools for Survival, you're probably thinking of like hammers and stuff like that. But it also includes things that you would need for like food preservation, gardening, also sewing and leatherworking, electrical tools, basically the full gamut of all the different kinds of equipment and just small odds and ends that you would need to survive a longer term situation. And another book that I think fits well in this basic preparedness category is Build the Perfect Bug Out Bag by Creek Stewart. And even though the title's specifically for bug out bags, you can apply this knowledge to other kits as well, like your Get Home bag. And what's good about this one is that it shows how to make a kit for maybe the kind of lead member in your family or group, how to make kits for kids, and then also it takes it a step further by showing the things that you would need if you're somebody who maybe doesn't have the greatest wilderness survival skills, like you'll have more things you'll need to pack. And then also it has kind of a pared down list for people that maybe do have those wilderness survival skills. And y'all, I'm actually working on a book now. It's kind of been slow going, but if that's something you would be interested in, please let me know in the comments below. And yes, it will be in printed form because a lot of the information that you're gonna want to have isn't going to be very useful in digital form if things get really bad. The next category of books that every prepper should have is those that cover defense, and one of my favorites is Prepper's Home Defense by Jim Cobb. And when most people think about defense, they think about one thing: lots and lots of guns. And yes, having those is important. There's no other tool out there that can do as effective of a job at stopping a bad guy as one of those can, but there's other things that you need to consider to have a very well thought out home defense strategy. And this book covers those things. Like it talks about having a layered home security plan. It talks about how to harden your home to make it more difficult to get into. Also covers things like communications, also how to form mutual aid groups. So this is a pretty comprehensive look at what preppers would need from a defensive standpoint. Another good defense-related book is Principles of Personal Defense by Jeff Cooper, and the value of this book is that it teaches you the mindset that you would need to survive. That includes how to be alert so that hopefully you don't find yourself in a bad situation to begin with, you can avoid one. But also, if you do find yourself in a position where you're being threatened, it shows you how you need to think and behave in order to make it through that. While Principles of Personal Defense addresses mindset, The Gift of Fear details other mental aspects of protecting yourself. For example, it goes over how all of us have survival instincts to help us know if someone or a situation could cause us harm, but many times we suppress those out of, wanting to be socially proper. We don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. And then it also covers tactics that criminals use to take advantage of people. 100 Deadly Skills is a very entertaining read that covers tons of things that you hope you never have to do. Now, it does have more basic things like how to put together a good EDC and how to make caches to hide your gear in. But there's other stuff, like how to make weapons out of everyday objects. Also, kind of a weird one is how to convert a speaker into a microphone so it can be used for surveillance. So this one, it's a lot of fun. I think I actually read through this in less than 24 hours. It kind of hooked me. We were on vacation and I just binge read it. Has these neat little comic drawings in it to explain things. So this is a good one to have also. The next group of books preppers should have cover ways to prepare your home and, if you have it, property. Possibly the most important book in this category is The Encyclopedia of Country Living by Carla Emery. Now, just full disclosure, this is not going to be a book that you want to try to sit down and read all the way through because, like the name suggests, it actually is a full-on encyclopedia of things that you would need to know basically about homesteading. Some of the highlights include things like canning different kinds of food to preserve it, also gardening tips, recipes, and then even some medical topics like childbirth. The Foxfire series is another very valuable resource, and the whole set consists of 12 books plus a couple extra special editions. And the types of information that this series covers is really expansive. It covers things like log cabin building, beekeeping, blacksmithing, and just a ton of different topics that could be useful for preppers. And from what I've seen, this is probably one of the best sets of books out there that cover the different kinds of information that you would need to know if we were to experience a longer-term collapse where we were to basically go back to the late 1800s. Then also within this house and homestead category, you should have some books on gardening. Preferably you'd have some books that are specific to the area where you live, because the things I need to know in Texas are probably very different than what somebody in Maine would need to know. However, there are several books out there that are helpful regardless of where you live, and one of them is Jaya's Garden. And I know I probably mispronounced that, but I'm from the South and that's kind of what we do. But this book is all about permaculture, and if you're not sure what that is, it's more or less gardening in such a way that different elements of your garden will benefit the others around it, and they kind of form their own complete ecosystem. So an example of that would be planting flowers around your vegetable plants so that they'll attract pollinators, which will help your vegetable plants pollinate as well. But there's a lot more to it than that, and this book does a good job covering it. But one book that covers how preppers specifically can use permaculture to their advantage is The Secret Garden of Survival by Rick Austin. Rick has been a part of the prepper community for a long time now. Back in the day, him and his wife were on the show Doomsday Preppers, and I believe that they had either the highest or second highest score throughout the entire series. And one of the things that was so special about their preps was their garden. They had set up a permaculture garden that was more or less a self-sustained ecosystem that looked more or less like just overgrown brush. So if people came by it, they wouldn't really know that it was food, but it produced a ton of food. And this book will help you set up one for yourself. If you're a prepper and want to build your own home, then The Secure Home by Joel Skousen is probably the best resource that you'll find. As you can see, this is a very thick and detailed book. It has basic things like rooms that you may want to include in a new home build, but also shows you how to remodel existing homes as well. It does a very good job of showing how to make your home more energy efficient from a design standpoint and also more defensible so that, bad people who are trying to get in have a much harder time doing so. Mr. Skousen also has some other books, including Strategic Location. And what's good about it is that it goes over in great detail the pros and cons of living in pretty much every area of the United States. It has maps that include things like potential nuclear targets, and I mean, unfortunately, that is good to know with all the craziness that's going on right now. But it gives each state a survivability rating. I think it's a 5-star rating system, and also shows different areas of all the states that could be good places to be and could also be bad places to be. And if you were in a state that most people would assume is somewhere you would want to avoid, like the plague, there might still actually be some areas that could be at least a little bit more doable than others. The next group of books that every prepper should have is survival books. Even though most of us would agree that bugging in is the best way to deal with most situations, there may still come a time where something goes down and you're away from your home and you're away from your preps, or you lose all of them in some sort of accident. And when it comes to survival guides, the SAS Survival Handbook is one of the best out there. It'll teach you how to do things like set up your survival kit and how to make different kinds of traps for animals, and it also has entire sections dedicated to surviving in specific environments like desert environments and even the open ocean. But one thing I really like about this book is that it has detailed drawings for the things that it's describing. So that's very useful for things like knot tying or building traps. And then it also has other things in here like some nice color drawings and pictures of different kinds of plants. It has both edible plants that you could use to your advantage, and then it also covers some poisonous plants and then also some dangerous animals that you want to avoid as well. Bushcraft 101 is another good survival book, and where the SAS Survival Guide kind of takes a look at pretty much everything, this zeroes in on the specific gear and specific skills that you would need. And just like the SAS Survival Guide has a lot of, good drawings and diagrams of the things that it's describing to help you out. If you're needing something a little more basic, the 100 Deadly Skills Survival Edition is a good choice. Like the original 100 Deadly Skills, this is a very fun and very easy book to read. So if you have somebody in your family, maybe like a teenager who you're trying to get into like survival and preparedness, this would probably be a better book to give them than something like one of these, just because, it has these fun comic style drawings in it, and it is a lot easier to follow if you're maybe new at this. And then don't overlook military survival manuals. This is one that I found in my grandfather's shed when I was a teenager, and it's probably the most common military survival manual out there. That one's been reprinted the most, but there are some other good military survival manuals out there. Like I know the Air Force Survival Manual, it's pretty substantial. I think it's actually a lot larger than the Army one. But don't overlook the other military manuals as well, like Combat Skills of the Soldier. There's just a ton of them. And another survival-related book that you want to have is something that can help you identify edible and dangerous plants. This one's by the Department of the Army, so it's kind of, military manual also, but it specifically covers different plants that you can eat, plants that you want to stay away from. And while, yes, you do want to probably get some professional help and training in that area, because if you eat the wrong thing, it can kill you, having some sort of pictorial reference that you can just grab and look at is very beneficial. Another category of books preppers should have is medical references, and the Survival Medicine Handbook is one of the best. Now, like the Encyclopedia of Country Living, this probably isn't going to be something that you just sit and read through for fun. It's 600 pages of information on how to identify and deal with different illnesses and injuries that you could experience during a longer-term survival situation. Then there's some other books in this category that I need to pick up, like Where There Is No Doctor, Where There Is No Dentist. While I don't have those yet, it is my understanding that they are both excellent resources. And even though I probably could have put these in the survival book category, you may also want to pick up the Audubon Field Guides over insects and then reptiles and amphibians. But the reason why I'm putting them in the medical category is that if you get bit by a snake or a spider, then being able to identify that properly is a very important step in getting the correct treatment. And that's true now if you can get real medical help, or also if we're in a longer term survival situation and you can't, then having these will help you do that. Then there's some other Audubon field guides that you may want to have that aren't medical related. Things like the book that covers like North American mammals, also tree identification, and then has a book of like weather patterns, like how to read the clouds to determine what the weather's gonna be like. And if you live maybe in another part of the world and the stuff for North America would not be relevant to you, then I'm sure that you can find some similar books that cover wildlife and other natural things in your area. The next category of books that preppers should have is those that deal with repair and maintenance. And probably the first place most people's minds go to is things like home repair, and those are important. You want to have books on those. Specifically, you probably want to have books that cover specific aspects of taking care of your home, like a book over electrical, a book over plumbing, because those are going to go in greater detail than just like a catch-all book. Then you also want to have things for repairing different kinds of equipment, like tractors or anything else with gas or diesel engines that you may want to take care of. But also, if you're using things for defense, having some shop manuals would be a very good idea. Being able to repair your equipment in a longer term situation is extremely beneficial because you might not always be able to find somebody that can do it for you. The next category of books that every prepper should have is those that deal with finance. And there's some books out there that cover the personal financial ramifications of something like a long-term economic collapse. I probably need to add those. I don't have them. But what I do have are just some very good foundational financial texts I think everybody would benefit from having. First one is The Richest Man in Babylon. And what's good about this is that it does a very good job explaining the value of saving your money instead of just blowing it on the first stupid thing that walks in front of your eyeballs when you get money. And considering how things are going in this country, I think this should be required reading for every high school student in America, and it's kind of stupid that it's not. And then other books like Rich Dad Poor Dad and The Millionaire Next Door are good because they help you kind of change your mindset with how you think about earning money. Like Rich Dad Poor Dad shows the value of being an investor, and in Millionaire Next Door, it kind of changes your perspective on who actual millionaires really are, the things that they do for a living. It's not all just a bunch of doctors and lawyers running around, but also shows ways that they manage their money so that, they get the most out of it and they don't lose it unnecessarily. And the reason why the financial stuff is so important is because prepping is expensive, but also out of all of the things that we cover on channels like this, one of the most likely things that we are going to face sometime in our life is a financial calamity of some sort. It could be unexpected medical bills. It could be something happens to our home and then we have to pony up enough money to pay for our deductible on our insurance. And having that much money saved up is good. But also, if you can earn more money, especially if you're a younger viewer on this channel, then these books would be a good way to kind of help break the mentality of the only way to earn money is from a 9-to-5 job, which is not true anymore. And y'all, if you're going to have a good-sized survival library, you better have a good bug-in plan so you don't have to leave all of them behind. So if you want to learn more about bugging in and the things that you would need to do that effectively, then check out these videos. Thank y'all for stopping by. Y'all have a good one.